What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. Today we're upgrading the Winter Precon deck, but before we get into that, let's shout out those patrons. Irrelevant, you rock. Additionally, if you guys want to pick up any of these singles that I'm going to be suggesting today, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You'll get a free $15 whenever you sign up, so you'll get some money to buy some Precon upgrades, and you'll be helping the channel out whenever you do that. Additionally, just liking, commenting, and subscribing is going to help the channel out a ton, so I really appreciate whenever you guys do that as well. But now, let's get into these upgrades, and what the goal of the deck is going to be doing. Now, Winter's very simple. He attacks, he mills 3 cards, and then at the beginning of our end step, we can exile as many cards as we need to get to 4 card typings, and then we get to put one of those permanent cards directly onto the battlefield. So this is Golgari cheat big stuff into play, which I'm a fan of. And the goal that they took with this deck is mill our library to an oblivion, which isn't a terrible strategy, but we're just going to bolster it a little bit because this deck has a ton of attack triggers. Even Winter himself has an attack trigger. So we're going to be adding cards to this deck to protect our attack triggers to ensure that we can get them off consistently, because that's very important. Another very important thing that this deck is lacking is card advantage, and mill can be card advantage if you include the right cards to take advantage of it, which this deck is kind of lacking. We need to be able to return those cards from our graveyard to our hand to turn it into card advantage, right? As long as we're milling a ton of cards, returning it to our hand, we're effectively drawing cards in a roundabout manner. So we're going to be adding some cards to make sure we can take care of that, and then we're just going to be adding a bunch of cool cards that have multiple typings to take advantage of Winter's ability. A little bit of a side note, I am loving the Delirium aspect to this set, and honestly it makes me just want to go back and build the Jund Corvold that cares about card typings. That could be a really fun deck. As the deck stands, it's a very powerful kind of Voltron deck that draws a ton of cards, and it ended up just being super scary, but it would be kind of cool to just do a Delirium deck around a Jund Corvold. So let me know what you guys think about doing that and going back and building that, because that just sounds like a fun thing I want to do. But with that being said, let's get into these Precon upgrades. The first part of this upgrade guide is going to focus on all of our creatures with attack triggers. Being able to ensure that we can attack our opponents without them being able to block and kill our important creatures is very important to this strategy working. So without further ado, we are going to be adding canopy cover to the deck. This is my favorite way to not only protect our key pieces, but additionally it makes our key pieces unblockable, so we're getting our attack triggers off of Winter, and we're protecting Winter at the same time. Champion of Liamhull is also super useful for the same reason. Now, it takes a little bit to get some power on this girl, but once she gets some power on her, it's going to essentially make our entire board unblockable, allowing us to not only get all of our attack triggers, but additionally deal a lot of damage to our opponents. Or on Frostfang, now I know Winter already has Death Touch, but giving Death Touch to all of our other creatures that have attack triggers is going to be very useful as well. Not to mention, we're going to get a ton of card advantage off this thing. Stonehoof Chieftain is also a no-brainer here. Not only is it going to be pretty easy to reanimate or cheat into play using Winter's ability, but additionally, whenever another creature you control attacks, it's going to gain trample and indestructible, again allowing us to get all of the attack triggers we need. Additionally, this guy also is just an 8/8 with trample and indestructible. That's going to be a problem for our opponents. Now let's move on to the next portion of the upgrades, which is going to focus on multiple typing creatures, and a lot of them want to put themselves in the graveyard, like Shigeki Jukai Visionary. It honestly blows my mind that they put this in the Simic Precon, but didn't put it in the Golgari Precon that cares about multiple typings, it cares about milling cards, and it cares about your graveyard. So not only does this guy mill cards, he can put himself in the graveyard, and he has a creature and enchantment typing. Honestly, seems like a weird choice they excluded him, but hey, we're gonna go ahead and add him right in here. Milliken, also super good here. It's an artifact, it's a creature, and it mills a card, plus it adds mana to our mana pool. So it's kind of doing everything we want to do here. Tormagoyf's Nest is also going to be a welcome include here. Not only is it going to make some massive creatures in the late game, but it also does have a dual typing. Kindred is another typing that Winter cares about, so this is a Kindred enchantment, so boom, 2 typings right out of the gate. All we have to do is exile an artifact creature and then a Kindred enchantment, and boom, for the price of 2 cards, we're cheating 1 into play, and that's kind of where we want to be with this deck. Mindwreck Harpy, again, not only do we have an enchantment creature here, additionally it synergizes with the strategy of milling us to an oblivion. Archetype of Endurance is also super solid here. We can cheat this into play with Winter super easily, and then additionally it is an enchantment creature, so we've got more dual typing synergies. Lonesome Eyebot is also going to fit perfectly in this strategy. It's an artifact creature that puts itself in the graveyard, which is exactly what we're looking for. Not to mention, it's going to give us a little bit of card advantage on his way out. Greater Tunaki also has a channel ability, so we can discard Greater Tunaki to search our library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield. So not only are we spending 3 mana, channeling this guy, and ramping in the early game, in the late game we're definitely exiling this guy to Winter's ability and cheating something broken into play. Biotransference just straight up cheats the system here. It's going to turn all of our creatures in our grave, in our library, on the battlefield into artifact creatures in addition to their other types. Basically cheating the system, allowing us to get an extra typing whenever we're exiling one of our creatures. Additionally, it can create a board state pretty fast, so it's a welcome include here. Moving on to the more synergistic cards, we have Babala Saga. Now, this is a Golgari deck that cares about multiple creature typings, so why not include her, get a ton of card advantage while we're at it, right? Sacrificing 2 permanents to draw 3 cards, which 9 times out of 10 we're only going to have to sacrifice 2 permanents to get her trigger, is incredibly valuable here. It's just a ton of card advantage. Old One Eye, I like this guy. I'm playing with him. You guys need to let me know down in the comments if you've had any success with this guy, but I love him specifically in Greater Good decks. Because you're able to cast him, you add 11 power to the board, and then Greater Good, you can sacrifice him to draw 11 cards, and you're only going to have to discard 6 of those cards. Now, what are the odds that out of 6 of the cards we're discarding, we can create up to 4 typings? I'm saying the odds are pretty damn good there. So I think it's going to be perfect here just as sacrifice fodder and as a giant creature in general. 6 is another one of the key cards that I think we need in these Golgari decks that just want to mill everything as fast as possible, because it's going to turn our mill into card advantage. As long as we can discard those land cards, we now have access to all the permanent cards in our graveyard, which is incredibly useful. Again, turning mill into card advantage should be the goal in these Golgari decks. Marin of Clan Eltoth is kind of going to do the same thing here, but a little more restrictive. She's going to grab our most impactful creature in the graveyard at our end step and put it into our hand. And then if we make it to the late game, she can just treat that creature directly into play. Ruthless Technomancer also seemed like a no-brainer here. We are playing some massive creatures in this deck, not to mention he is some solid recursion. So not only do we get the recursion aspect, he's explosive ramp at its finest. Sacrificing a 7/7 for 7 treasure tokens can catapult you ahead of your opponents and win you the game in the right scenario, especially when you have 6 on the battlefield and you have options to sacrifice this guy and recast him from your graveyard. You can start doing some pretty broken stuff. Ripples of Undeath is quickly becoming one of my favorite turn 2 plays in these graveyard decks. You see 3 cards a turn and you have the option to put one of those 3 cards back into your hand. So it can be amazing mill or amazing card advantage depending how you use it, and it's going to change on a turn to turn basis. It can throw 3 lands on the top of your library into your graveyard, and if you need one of those lands, it can put one of those lands into your hand. I'm just really loving the flexibility of this card and how cheap it is also. Insidious Roots, again, we're going to have creatures coming in and out of the graveyard pretty consistently. We are playing Golgari, right? So not only does this just ramp us from the deck doing exactly what it wants to do, additionally, it makes a board state that just gets bigger, so we're going to take that here. Buried Alive is also super budget right now. This used to be a $5 card, and now it's like a 50-cent card, so putting it in a precon is very useful, especially when you can get all 4 of your typings off of Buried Alive and get exactly what you want to reanimate in the graveyard, all with 1 card. So this is going to be an amazing card to include here. Screeching Scorchbeast has quickly become one of my favorite things to reanimate, so we're going to add it here simply as a creature we want to cheat into play. This guy creates an unstoppable board state of zombies very quickly while it mills us, which is exactly what this deck wants to do in the first place. Massacre Worm has honestly saved my ass too many times to count. Everybody's trying to create as many creatures as possible as fast as possible, and 9 times out of 10 they're not very big. Maybe they've got a Scute Swarm and create 1,000 Scute Swarms out of nowhere, but then they have to pass a turn because they don't have haste, this is where Massacre Worm comes in handy and actually will just straight up kill that player. So like I said, I've killed a lot of players with this and it's just saved my ass too many times to count, so he's definitely going to see an inclusion in this deck. Not to mention, in Golgari, it's pretty simple to reanimate him, sacrifice him, and then reanimate him again to give the entire board -4/-4, which I have done in the past as well. So he's just a very flexible card that can win you the game in the right scenario, or at least save you from losing the game. With that being said, guys, that brings us to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below, like the video if you want a non-budget version of Winter. I think it's a really cool mechanic. Like I said, I've been loving the delirium aspect to these Jund and Golgari decks that they've been adding recently. And also leave a comment down below if you want me to go back and rebuild that Corvold list to be more delirium based and less Voltron kill everybody as fast as possible. I'm really curious if you guys would be interested in that, because I'm kind of interested in that. With that being said, let's shout out those patrons. Irrelevant, Chicken Salad, Excessum, Creator, you guys are amazing. Don't forget to pick up that $15 free from the whatnot description down below. And as always, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors. Have a nice day.